Meg. This is Daniel Howat from Next Best Picture. You guys wrote the incredible screenplay for Inside Out 2, the highest grossing animated movie of all time. What was this summer like for the two of you when Inside Out 2 was everywhere, first of all, and then breaking records left and right? What was that summer like?
Surreal.
It's fun.
Uh, I don't know about you, Meg, but I left the country immediately. I didn't want to be around in case this thing bombed, and so I got out of here and was just following these crazy daily updates on online about how this movie was just hitting every note for people.
Yeah, I was the opposite. In LA, we've got lots of billboards, bus posters. I mean, they were everywhere. And so even giant holes at LAX, I just ran around with my kids and took pictures everywhere because I was like, I'm going to enjoy this. Because, you don't ever know. We love the movie. We think it's a powerful movie, but, you don't ever want to, bet everything on it because life can be funny. But it did really, touch people, and it was really thrilling. It was just thrilling.
Yeah, when did you start to feel relief of like, okay, people, first of all, people do like the movie and the movie is successful? When did you start feeling that sense of relief?
I was at the Annecy Festival with Kelsey, the director, Kelsey Mann, when the reviews started to come in, the first reviews, and we were with the Disney PR team. So we were all sort of the right people to be getting all that incoming at the same time, and we had this inkling that at least it's being received well, but we didn't really know that the box office numbers were going to be what they were, and then that came a couple of days later, and that was just crazy.
And I took my family to the El Capitan, and just the reactions in the room, it was just electric. And afterwards, people found out that I wrote it, and they wanted to talk to me. And a guy said, I've already seen it twice. And I thought, okay, all right. He's seen it twice. It's Saturday. We're good.
The amount of times leading up to the premiere where I heard about people bringing large groups, like, oh, our entire first grade class is going, or our entire mom group is going. And that's when I started to get an inkling that maybe this is going to be bigger than we thought it was going to be.
And that the movie was, I heard there were movies full of people that there weren't even many kids there, that adults were responding to the movie as an adult movie, and something for them, which, is always so, so thrilling.
Yeah, 100%. There is stuff here, absolutely for kids to learn about. Have some language around emotions and just enjoy a good movie, but lots for adults to relate to as well. Well, I want to dive into the making of the movie, of course. Meg, you co-wrote the first Inside Out as well, and you share a story credit on this one with Kelsey Mann. When time came for Inside Out 2, where did you get started?
Well, of course, I wanted to come back because I love the characters and so wanted to be part of it, but also honestly because it's Kelsey Mann. I knew him from working on The Good Dinosaur, and I just so supported him as a director and wanted to do everything I could to help him bring his story to life. So we started in a room, Kelsey and I. He had pitched this idea of anxiety taking over headquarters. So we did a deep dive into research in terms of our professionals, but we also really looked at ourselves and how our anxiety affects us. We're both anxious people. And then guess what? We had a pandemic. So now we had anxiety everywhere to research. It was everywhere. It was nationwide. But the first big thing that we pitched to Pete Docter as our executive producer, who did the first movie, was these new emotions. And that it wasn't that easy to get done, but he saw the value in it. And then we started the three-dimensional chess that this movie is, which is Riley's story, Joy's story, anxiety's story. And by the way, sadness has her own little part. And we just iterated many, many times, trying to find that click of both entertaining, but deeply emotional and authentic.
After the success of the first film, did you get people coming up to you and saying, "Oh, you need to include this emotion"? Like, were you just getting pitched for different emotions all the time?
A little bit, but I'll tell you, it's much more now. I mean,
Sure.
I literally am like, please don't tell me about Inside Out 3. Don't tell me. And they just want to tell me all the new emotions that they want. I think somehow opening that door, and that there is literally a door, it's just opened people wanting to talk about it, which is wonderful because it means they're deeply connecting to the movie and they want to share themselves with us.
100%. And Dave, if I'm not mistaken, this is your first animated film. What was it like stepping into Riley's world and kind of playing in the world of animation for the first time?
I mean, it's this incredible thing no one can prepare you for, especially at Pixar. You know, you're in this, and I've been in very um, high boiling point situations in television and various different creative processes. With Pixar, you know, you're writing, shooting, and editing all at the same time at 100 miles an hour. You know, I always like to say it's like a 100-yard dash that takes 5 years. You know, like you're just completely in a sprint and constantly having to juggle the granular activity of like writing a great joke with also looking wider all the time about are we telling the story we're trying to tell? Is our third act shaking hands with the first act? You know, does every great moment have three beats that pays off? You know, you're constantly on the lookout for so much because there's so much the movie has to do to really elevate itself to be a Pixar film, you know, and one of the things that I think makes this movie particularly so special is that, you know, I have a 7-year-old son, and when he watches this film, he's not getting all of the heady stuff that we adults get when we watch it, but he will. And there's something about a movie that you can watch every 3 years and see a different film. And I think that that's a really impressive thing just in the Pixar pedigree, but especially for a movie that literally follows a girl growing up, that you're able to return to these films in different parts of your life and see a different film. You know, I wasn't a dad when I saw the first movie, you know, and I am now, and they hit me very differently. And I think I hope what Meg and I, you know, can feel really great about is that if nothing else, these films, they have a life of their own and they grow with the audience.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. I have twin 6-year-old boys, so same thing. I
Mhm.
parent watching this with the lens of a parent is very, very different, at least for the first film than it was back when I first saw it. But like you hinted at, there's a lot of complex layers, even just from a plot perspective, even before diving into the deep emotions. You know, the main characters are the emotions, but it's, you know, not Riley is not just a framing device for these emotions. She has a legitimate story going on of her own. How do you balance giving Riley a full, complete story and her emotions having a full, complete journey as well?
And then two different places, the complete emotions, you know,
With
Yes.
different rules. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
with different rules. Every world has a different world. Every world has a different rule. Um, you know, you balance it by always knowing that joy is the lead, and that's where we have to, that's the core centering spine of the movie. And there were many, many times and many iterations where we had a sequence we loved, Procrastination Land being an example, but it just didn't really service Riley's story. It didn't really service Anxiety's story. So it had to go. So that was also part of the writing process. And I know Dave feels this as well, which is sometimes having all those ideas rushing around is thrilling, and sometimes it's like you have to be the writer. You have to say, but we're writing a story, and how is this building for Joy? How is this building for Riley? How is Anxiety? Where are we ending up? You know, there's just so many levels of writing going on.
Yeah, and the adding those new emotions adds another layer of complexity. Kelsey has talked about lots of different emotions that were kind of in the mix to be added, and there was a much bigger number at first, and you guys kind of culled it down. How challenging was it to narrow down who the actual new emotions were going to be?
Well, it was super fun, first of all, because you know Schadenfreude. There's nothing more fun than Schadenfreude, and he keeps trying to get in the movies. But you know, I think the one that the biggest change was Shame was in the movie, and she was a much bigger antagonist even than Anxiety, and it was very powerful. There were very, very powerful scenes, but it just became very apparent that it was stealing from Anxiety, and it was kind of bifurcating the movie. And that, you know, Kelsey and I made the big decision to say, okay, we're not going to go that direction. Um, so it is a process in which you're iterating that entire script and drawing it in order to see that's not we're off track. We have to go back towards the North Star of Anxiety and where Kelsey started this and what feels authentic to us.
Did any of the new emotions that did make it in almost get left out? Was there a version where you cut any of the characters that ended up staying?
I don't think so. Dave, do you think so? Not that I can think of.
I remember hearing about a bit of battle to get ennui in, just because ennui is
Yes, I did have
a
the
silly
battle.
name, but like, or in French, a name. But it is,
Yeah, I was like, listen, that's the point. Joy doesn't
yeah,
can't say it either. That's the funny joke. But yeah.
it's, I'm glad because I think ennui is what was one of my favorite characters to write for, um, and to look at. I love the design of that character.
So
She's
good.
so good. Well, the anxiety attack is one of the most loved scenes from the film because of how it's resonated with people, myself included. It's such a brilliant depiction of anxiety. I'm curious what that scene looked like on the page. How did you approach crafting that sequence?
That's a sequence that I think was crafted more times than any in the film. And ultimately, I give credit to Kelsey and John Hoffman and Pete Docter and anyone who contributed to that moment, because that was something that took a long time to get right. And really, it didn't click until we worked backwards from the visuals. There was that idea of the sort of storm within headquarters, and then the mini moments that they sort of discovered of, that even the biggest emotion, embarrassment, couldn't push his way through the storm, but it took joy to. And I know that Pete always had this idea that Riley, that Joy is sort of called to the console, by Riley, and that being a very emotional moment. And I think working backwards from that was a part of it as well. There were a lot of elements that we had to get to click to make that sequence work. I mean, from a writing perspective, most of that sequence is visual, and that's why it works great. And that's why animation is so great, because sometimes the best thing you can do as a writer is take a step back, and let the artist sort of translate emotion into just incredible set pieces.
Yeah, and it works wonderfully. And what helps with that sequence is the concept of sense of self. I want to ask about that as well. You guys got me. I totally fell for the bait and switch of seeing Joy build Riley's sense of self, only for the more authentic, impactful sense of self to be imperfect and have these other less perfect emotions. Tell me about developing this concept and how you made that turn in the end.
Well, I know that Meg can speak to the genesis of the sense of self as a concept. I know that we were always toying with the equation of how do you do this one, two, three of joy, sense of self, anxiety's sense of self, and then a real sense of self that made sense and was also surprising, and I think that what it boiled down to was the truth, which is that, your sense of self, especially at that age, is always changing. And we didn't want to say there's a perfect sense of self or there's a correct sense of self. That didn't feel right. So it honestly clicked when we sort of found a way to get the belief system in, because there was this moment where we knew that Joy had to accept that there would be good and bad beliefs. And when that idea clicked in and we understood the sort of physical connection between the beliefs and the sense of self, that they were sort of growing into it, how to sort of make that idea work a little clearer. I mean, you can talk it through all you want, but until you can see it, does it really make sense? And I think that it was getting the belief system to shake hands with the sense of self and get your sort of conflicting beliefs about yourself to be what a true sense of self is. You're brave, but you're scared, depending on the situation. So that's how it evolved towards the end.
Yeah, and, from the very beginning, Kelsey was talking about perfectionism. And that shot at the very end of her looking in the mirror has always been in the movie because she's accepting herself for all that she is, and that Joy ultimately, in growing up herself, realizes that she is self-compassion, I think. I think that Joy is going from kind of a silly idea of joy to a much more profound idea, which is that she will love this child. She won't kind of take pieces of her and put it in the back of the mind, that she will love all of this child, for everything that she is. And that was always a very important spine of the film. And the sense of self was fun because, at the beginning, you're like, what is it? Like, is it a statue that's cracking? Yeah, I don't know. But you have these beautiful, artists who can start drawing those beautiful things. And um, but always it was that the sense of self was going to be much more complex and good and bad, because that is the beauty of all of us, is that we are all so varied and not perfect.
It comes together beautifully in the end. Your guys' work on this film is so wonderful. And one thing I'm always curious about when it comes to writing an animated film is the extent to which the film changes throughout production. Dave, you said it earlier about you're kind of doing all of the things all at once. It's not you're writing the script and then you're filming it. You're doing it all at once. Meg, especially since you've worked so much in animation, can you speak to how different, how much the film changes over the course of writing an animated film, and how different the end result is from where you started for Inside Out 2?
Yeah, it's a very iterative process. I mean, at the very beginning, when it's just me and Kelsey, it really isn't in production. We really are in a development process, researching, outlining, carding, scripting, revising. It's when you go into board. So it kind of ramps into that feeling. But because it's iterating, it's constantly iterating. Even after you've got your base, here's the basic story, here's the 3 stories that we think. But because of that iteration, it's beautiful, and that you're constantly trying. At Pixar, the only thing I ever heard as a rule was fail fast. They really want you out on an edge, pushing yourself, pushing the creative, pushing your ideas. And they know that everything isn't going to work. And as a writer, that's really beautiful and incredibly challenging, because you really have to be willing to change it all, toss it, put it away, put it away. Let's go back to outline. Let's go back to outline. So that you get that depth starting, right? And that layering is really starting. So as a writer, it's an incredibly challenging process to iterate that much, but it works as well, I'll say.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you end up writing 10 movies. I mean, and not just the pages of 10 movies. I mean, you're writing, I mean, we do about 9 screenings over the course of the process, and these screenings are full presentations of the movie where they are at that point. But it's the beginning, middle, and end. And afterwards, you have these great note sessions where you tear it apart and build it back up, but you're writing, 9 to 10 different films throughout the process. And that's, I mean, incredible that we have the resources to do that. But from a writer's perspective, yeah, it's a lot of page count.
That's good. Well, like I said, Meg, you've been working in animation for years. Wrote The Good Dinosaur and the very underrated My Father's Dragon. I love that movie a lot, by the way. What's drawn you to work in animation as much as you have?
Well, I began in animation because I realized that Pixar had some of the best storytellers in the world. And I really, as a writer, wanted to be challenged at that level. I mean, that was the most terrifying and thrilling thing I could think of as a writer, is to be in a room with that level of storytellers. So I wasn't an animation person, meaning there are many people who just that's their game. That's what they love the most. I was more of a storyteller junkie. And because of Pixar's ability, that's really where I went to push myself and learn. And then it really teaches you about behavior and being very visual. And, if you're handing out your sequence to the storyboard artist and they don't look like they want to draw it, you're like, oh no, this is not good. So it really ups your game, I have to tell you, as a writer, to be in that process. And so for me, I also just love that the metaphors you can do in animation. The dreamer part of you has much more access. And you get to, as Dave said, you get to stay really long in the process. It does start to feel like you're the writer on set, and that they need you. Now, of course, once they go into animation, they want to be not writing because it's expensive. But I love the collaborative atmosphere of animation. It's my favorite.
That's awesome. Okay, well, my time is up here, so I will end with the annoying question. I am so sure that meetings have started about Inside Out 3, considering it is the highest grossing animated movie of all time. Have you guys started sitting down? I know you're not going to tell me anything. That's okay. If you want to give me a scoop,
If we could,
can.
we would. Honestly, there's very little to say. I mean, I don't even think much has officially transpired other than looking at the box office and saying, well, we should start thinking about another one. I don't think there's really anything to tell. But other than it's great to know that it feels like there is a support out there for more of these. And I don't know if you've ever seen the Michael Apted documentary series, 7 Up.
Mhm.
I sort of personally hope that that's what this becomes, which is you're really following Riley, into adulthood. I think that would be really amazing.
It would be. And you know, at Pixar, even for this second movie, they have to have an idea that is sequel worthy. Like people love to, tell us what emotions could be in there, but that's not a movie, and it has to be something that is sequel worthy idea that has the depth, that as well as the fun. So we'll see when that idea arrives.
Amazing. Well, Dave and Meg, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the film. I really love it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your time. Take care.